Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2020 Nissan Altima, we're going to be showing you how to install the Curt Trailer Hitch Receiver. But before we get into that, why don't we just take a minute, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Putting a hitch on the back of your Altima is really going to help open up your opportunities on what you can do with your vehicle. I know a lot of people use bike racks with their trailer hitch. As a matter of fact, that's what our customer is doing today. And so having this back here will allow you to do that. And it sure beats, at least in my opinion, dealing with having to put a bike on the roof or take it apart and stuff it inside of the Nissan. So it's going to really make things a lot easier. You know, have the rack back here, put your bike on it, and get to going. So this will be a good solution for that type of situation, among others. You know, it's not the only thing you can use it for, but that's just one of them. And visually speaking, the hitch really doesn't look too bad. You know, it sits a little bit further back, and honestly, when it's on the ground, you're not going to be able to see a whole lot of it. Compared to the other hitch available, honestly, I think this one looks better. It has a reinforced collar here, and just kind of puts off a more factory type look. With this being a Class 1 hitch, it is going to have the 1¼ by 1¼ receiver tube opening. It will use the 1/2 inch size pin and clip. Keep in mind though, pin and clip doesn't come with the hitch. If you need one, you can grab it here at eTrailer, but honestly, a lot of times accessories that you end up getting come with them, so just keep that in mind. The safety chain openings, I do like. They sit a little bit further back, so they're not as visible, and they're not going to really interfere with your pin and clip at all, and they're going to be large enough to use just about any size hook. In terms of the hitch's weight capacities, it's going to have a 200-pound maximum gross tongue weight rating, so that's going to be the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. So that's good for those 1 and 2 bike racks, maybe more, just depending on the weight of the rack and the bikes. I'll just kind of give you an example. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 2,000 pounds, or the amount of weight pulling on the hitch, so the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. I definitely like to suggest, so it's never a bad idea just to grab your Nissan's owner's manual. That way you can check in there and make sure that your Altima can handle that much weight safely. I'm going to give you a couple of measurements, and you can use these to help figure out which hitch mounted accessories will work best. You go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening. That's going to be about 10 inches. So if it were me and you were getting a new accessory, I'd probably try to find one that has a rise in the shank, just to give you a little more ground clearance. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 6 inches. And you can use that measurement to help figure out that if any folding type accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without hitting the back bumper. At the end of the day though, if it were me and I was looking for a hitch for my Altima, this is definitely the one I would probably lean on. In terms of the installation, you know, I won't say it's difficult. It's a little time consuming. It's definitely easier, at least in my opinion, than the other hitch available, if that's something that's really important to you. There are some things that might sound intimidating at first. You know, you do have to remove the muffler, but it's really not too bad on this particular vehicle. Everything's pretty easy to get to and easy to work around. So as long as you stay focused, really shouldn't run into a ton of issues. But if you'd like to see how that's done, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead and put the hitch on now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here underneath the back of our Nissan. And what we're going to do first is remove this underbody panel here. So there's some nuts that we'll have to remove, and then we'll start with removing the push pin fasteners along this edge here. So here's those push pins. What you can do is take a flathead screwdriver and pry underneath the head of it. We're just trying to get that fastener to pop out like that. A lot of times these can be kind of piled up with dirt and make it a little difficult to pop them out. If that's the case, just take your time, work it around, and eventually we'll get it to remove. Moving on to the nuts that we need to remove, there's a total of 5 of them. So we have 2 right here. We'll get them off using a 10mm, and then 3 along this edge. Now we should be able to drop this down and set it off to the side. Now we need to remove our mufflers. So from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same. But just kind of a quick tip, up here there's going to be a rubber isolator hanger that's helping secure our exhaust. Spray that down with some soapy water, some type of penetrating lubricant. Make it easier here in a moment. But then if you follow our muffler, we're going to have a clamp here. And again, you can spray this down with penetrating oil. Just makes it easier. But we're going to loosen up this clamp. So this is a 15mm socket that I'm using. And we just want to loosen it up really good. And we should be able to kind of start working our exhaust. Until it pops off. Then we can take the whole assembly and just slide it back. We'll set this out of the way. And up here is a better look at that hanger. All right, so that's what we were trying to get wet. And as you can see, by lubricating it, it makes it a lot easier for this to come and slide off. The muffler out of the way, we can remove our heat shields. So these are held in place by 2 rivets. And you just drill out the center, so use a drill bit, you know, somewhat bigger than the middle of the rivet. Drill it out until the head comes off there. This will pop down, and if you have any rivet exposed on the frame, you can come back with a smaller drill bit and just drill it through. That way everything's flush here. Moving back to the middle now, if you have this underbody panel, you're not going to reinstall it. However, you are going to take the plastic pushpin fasteners and put them back in place here, because these are helping to hold the bottom of our fascia to the actual vehicle. Now if you look at the bottom of our frame rail, we're going to have 2 attachment points that we're going to use to secure the hitch. This hole and this one. What we need to do though for this attachment point is enlarge this one a little bit. That way we're able to get our hardware up inside of the frame. So the spacer block and the head of our carriage bolt. So we want to open this up just big enough to allow these to fit. You can use a drill bit. I like to use a step bit and kind of work my way up and check every now and again. You can use a file, whatever you got. Obviously a power tool is going to speed things up, but it can be done by hand. So I'm just going to enlarge this and then check every now and again to make sure our hardware will fit. So I enlarge this just big enough that our hardware will indeed fit inside of the frame. But now that that is done, I'm going to take a paint stick. You can also use spray paint. Just put a layer around that bare metal. That way we have a little protection against rust. And I'll give that a few minutes to dry while I'm working on the other side. And then we'll come back and get our hardware in. So what we're going to do to get our hardware in, you want to start with this hole here. Take your fish wire, put the coil in through it, feed it towards the hole that we enlarged until it drops out. Then you're going to take the spacer block and the carriage bolt, thread that on, and feed the hardware up. Pull it down, and they only give you 1 fish wire. At least that's what came with ours. Usually you could leave these on here and just feed the hitch up through it. But only having 1, carefully remove it. And with this one, you're just going to take the coil then, put the spacer block on, thread on the carriage bolt, and feed those up. Now with an extra set of hands, we can raise our hitch into position. Be careful while you're doing this, because you don't want to push in bolts back into the frame. So there's a bumper bolt there on that bottom flange. It looks like you might have to kind of sneak the hitch in behind it. And once you get them both to drop through, you want to take one of the flange nuts and get one started on each side, hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself. The rest of the hardware will be the same, just a flange nut. Once you get both of them in place and hand tight, make sure the hitch is centered. So what I like to do is push it one way or the other, and then kind of just base it off of our frame rail here. Make sure the part exposed is about the same on each side. So we got it really close. I'm happy with it, and we'll come back with a 19 or 3/4 inch socket and snug everything down. At this point, you need to come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all of the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. Now we can get our exhaust back on. I want to mention those heat shields that we removed, you're not going to be reinstalling them. So just figured I'd point that out. But re-lubricated the hanger. Let's start to slide that on. And then work the exhaust pipe all the way back on, make sure it's fully seated. And we'll just come back and tighten them down. With our underbody panel here, they say this doesn't get reinstalled, but if we remove some of the material, we can get it to fit. So I figure why not? I just kind of held this up and look where we need to cut, drew a line here. We'll cut this out and kind of go from there. With this being somewhat thick plastic, I'm going to use a rotary tool to cut this out, but a pair of snips or something like that I'm sure would work as well. I did have to trim off just a little bit more of the panel. The first time I kind of left these parts coming up and they were just hitting the hitch, so cut them straight, and now it fits up there pretty good. No interference, and we'll just re-secure it the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Curt Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2020 Nissan Altima.